Welcome, everybody. I'm Eddie. I'm a core team member at Connext, and I'll be hosting this third Twitter Space of the series. It's called What's Next, where Connext Teams brings in projects from Web3 to talk about their vision and what they're building. So we want to highlight the innovation that these projects are spearheading and also talk to some of the talented individuals representing those teams about what's happening now and what's coming next for the future of the space. So today we're diving specifically into NFTs, and we have with us some speakers from various NFT infrastructure projects. So I'll introduce them shortly here, but then we'll also have a little bit of time for them to introduce themselves. We have Mango from Charged Particles. We have Ree from Fjord, which was previously known as Copper Launch. And we have Yuzu from NFT Hashi. Welcome. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves, give us a quick rundown of what you're working on. And for the listeners, if you want to comment any questions that you have for them, we can go through those as well. So why don't we start with you, Mango? Who are you and what are you working on?
Hey there, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it and excited to dive into this conversation. I'm the creative director at a protocol called Charged Particles, which is a DeFi and NFT composability tool that's live on both Ethereum and on Polygon, though we see ourselves as chain agnostic and are looking to expand into other blockchains as well. But very basically, we allow NFTs to become containers that can then hold other assets inside of them. So you can start to weave together the layers of value from both the NFT space as well as from DeFi by nesting NFTs inside of NFTs, interest-bearing Aave assets within NFTs. Basically, anything that can be held inside a wallet can now be stored inside an NFT itself, which allows you to build some really interesting new models across lots of different industries. And yeah, I'd be happy to go deeper into what some of those use cases are as we continue, but that's a very basic overview.
Awesome. That's super exciting and creative use of NFTs. How about you, Ree? Let's go with you next.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eddie. So I'm Ree. I'm the product manager for Fjord Foundry as well as Fjord NFTs. So formerly, some of you guys might have known us as Copper. We built on top of Balancer's liquidity bootstrapping pools to kind of help teams build communities easier, and have had like a bunch of teams launch last year. Teams like Merit Circle, Klima DAO, Floor DAO, across the GameFi space, across the DAOs and DeFi space. And so most recently we developed Fjord NFTs to take this same price discovery mechanism from ERC20s into ERC721s and 1155s. It's a way to launch collections without having to worry about configuring a price, configuring whitelists, configuring how many mints a particular address has available. You just launch a collection and set a few parameters for the price discovery. It starts off high and starts dropping. And so you empower your community to collectively decide what is the fair value of a new NFT project that's being launched. And that is particularly relevant in the market conditions we're facing now with the bear market. This way, project creators don't have to worry about all this overhead and stress, and they can just focus on what they're building and kind of let their community decide what's fair and build organically around that.
Amazing. We love to hear that fair launches is a really important concept, and also building these types of tools for creators that makes it easier for them is a really awesome thing. So I think Taiju, sorry, I introduced Yuzu earlier because I saw him hop on, but I believe Taiju will be with us for NFT Hashi. Go ahead, Taiju.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for having me, Eddie. This is happy to join this space. And I'm Taiju from NFT Hashi. And NFT Hashi is a kind of very simple protocol and a bridge. And it enables user to bridge any NFT, bridging from source chain to target chain. And I think this is a very quite simple use case of an NFT bridge using Connext. And we are providing very simple interface for bridging and SDK to integrating to any other use cases. So we are asking some NFT collectors or NFT creators or some NFT protocols to integrate the NFT bridge to their protocol. So this is about NFT Hashi.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So let's start off by talking about the current state of NFTs. And I'd like to slice this topic by end user adoption first, and then we can talk about challenges faced by builders. So first, regarding end user adoption, I'd like to ask you guys what you think are the main barriers in this industry that are preventing NFTs from becoming more accepted and useful. Like, what are we lacking that's holding back more widespread adoption?
I think there's probably a number of different answers to that question. You know, one of the obvious ones comes in the form of narrative and hype cycle and sort of general public perception of, you know, what an NFT is, its, you know, place in the world, its, you know, actual utility and all of these sorts of things. You know, and so I think that, you know, as we come into the next bull market, you know, the narrative will be an important component of that. You know, whereas, you know, the last cycle was really heavily centered around, you know, digital art, you know, that perhaps we'll have to find a new sort of killer use case to re-inspire people that are currently not a part of the Web3 ecosystem. I think there's a number of those that are possible. You know, within the gaming metaverse space, as well as within music, among many other things. But I think the story we tell, you know, and what, you know, crypto external people's perception of, you know, what NFTs are, what they mean, and even perhaps the words we use, you know, perhaps the next cycle comes as we move beyond using the word NFT in the first place. You know, I think we've seen, you know, in the last couple of weeks, a greater acceptance of the concept of digital collectibles, you know, on Reddit, for example, simply because we're using different language. So I think the story that we tell is probably a big part of that for end users.
Okay, and for me, I think the crypto and NFT needs the high onboarding cost to use the service, and like some chain requires very high transaction fee, especially for the NFTs. NFTs that could be the newcomer to the crypto space, and it is very difficult to start using the crypto. And some chain is coming to this space, and it makes user very challenging to choose which is the best chain to use. But I think a cross-chain NFT bridge enables user to have more flexibility in using the chain, and NFT bridge enables user to trade NFT in a very cost-efficient chain. So I think we can bring like gasless minting or gasless trading or very cheap trading to users. So this is more like providing an easy onboarding opportunity to user.
Yeah, I would actually agree with both of the speakers here. I think it's a mixture of probably perception of what NFTs are about and technology. Previously, because there were plenty of barriers to entry in terms of participation for an average user, a lot of the users that have been participating in the NFT space were probably more technically savvy, kind of DeFi adjacent people, or people that were often here for very speculative reasons. And personally, I think that going forward, as we get these more cross-chain opportunities and participation and better kind of integration with apps and wallets, we will see the narrative change to it being about community building and kind of it being a fair process that's not gameable. So really do think fair launches will be a big part of it. And with something like Reddit, you see that instantly it becomes clear to a lot of people that it's about community and identity. And so I think we'll see a lot more kind of new projects around that rather than a focus on the speculation. So and also likely a lot of new innovative use cases that haven't been yet unlocked. So really what charged particles are doing with NFTs being able to store other assets. So we'll see what the next big hit is, but I think something around the use case and community first will be what happens.
Something that we're thinking a lot about is the onboarding process, and I think there's at least two things to consider with that. One is how easy is it to become onboarded. Even in the last year or 2 years, the process of getting a crypto wallet and getting your first tokens and entering these different platforms and understanding all of these different technologies has gotten much more streamlined, but certainly not enough for a large majority of users. So the first component is, how do you make the on ramp such that it's not this super intimidating thing, and there's a lot of different pieces to that puzzle. And then the second component, broadly speaking, is, well, what do you do when you get here? If identity is such a big component of it, which you just mentioned, and I agree with, digital identity, well, then you need something to be doing in the digital space, and there has to be a reason that you're compelled to spend so much time in the digital landscape, so that identity becomes something that you care about. If you're not spending any time online, then it doesn't really matter to you, probably how your identity is presented to the community. And so I think this other large component of the picture is experiences in the metaverse and community and these sorts of things. So not just the on-ramp, but also, the experience layer of the digital space.
Yeah, those are really good points that you guys bring up. So it sounds like there are buckets within like the logistical realm where you have things like expensive gas to onboard users. And then there are also like psychological barriers where maybe we just need to shift the narrative or like drive a different marketing approach to some of these users for wider adoption. Thanks for sharing. I also wanted to follow up with that by asking if you guys have identified or like seen certain patterns of like marketing or parts of the launching and minting processes that you think could be improved.
Yeah, so we're obviously here to build fair launches. We've seen in the bear market specifically, oftentimes conceptually great ideas and great projects launch, but then really struggle on the mint because it's really hard to price something without community input. And we think this pattern of fair launching and enabling price discovery. So something like the price discovery facilitated by LBPs, or something like the Nouns model, where you get just a single mint every 24 hours. That is probably the way forward for solving for some of the problems we're seeing around mismatching on pricing, as well as really fighting off sniping bots. So, more technically savvy users figuring out how to mint ahead of everyone else if it is kind of a public mint without a whitelist. And also, even in instances, so we saw some creative launches with basically free mints. So in that instance, you get, again, like gas wars and people fighting to be first to the mint. So even though that, that solves the problem of pricing, it still has all these other issues. So we think that something like a price decay curve associated with a mint will solve both of those issues, as well as alleviate the stress on the project creator sides. So we'll see. We've had some pretty successful launches. We just released the product in September, and we've been collaborating with an art collective called Feldzine, and they're pretty open to experimenting with these new models and have seen some good success. And so we're pretty optimistic, and it looks like this is a great new way to launch mints. And we're also not making sure that it's easily accessible to anyone. So we just recently integrated with Manifold Studio as well to make it a zero code model. Because another thing we've noticed is that very often NFT creators have to rely on a lot of assistance on the smart contract development, and that increases their costs and ability to enter this market. So we're tackling the problem from both the creator and the participant side, and hopefully those are trends that we solve for.
Yeah, I love that you guys are tackling this problem, because it seems like there's so much opportunity in this space, but only the technologically savvy players can really capture most of the benefit. So because there's so much like information and capability asymmetry, we want to level the playing field a little bit, and that's the way that we bring more mainstream adoption to the space. Taiju and Mango, do you guys have anything to say on this topic?
Yeah, I think another component of making the onboarding process less painful is something that lots of different projects are thinking about, is making some of the more intimidating components of Web3 in general, but also the educational component, less visible, where you can reap the benefits of the technology without necessarily needing to know every single step of the way. It's like you don't need to understand the server architecture of https://x.com to be able to use the internet. These things just work in the background, and I think trying to kind of seamlessly weave some of these things into the future of Web3, such that they're not so it doesn't demand so much of the user in terms of education, while simultaneously maintaining the autonomous sort of self-sovereign nature of the tools, and trying to strike a balance, between the custodial and the non-custodial, and the transition between those phases, where, the fiat on-ramp and the custodial wallet becomes the, complete, expert crypto degen, and, what is the spectrum between those two, and, making it so that as you become more and more immersed in the space and more educated about these tools, that, it becomes as visible as you'd like it to, and trying to, figure out what all of those, striking the balance between all of those pieces looks like. And I think that's it's going to be a continuing process across different platforms. But I think it's an important thing to be considering as we continue to develop.
Yeah, and speaking of the components, I like the idea of integrating like manifold, anything, minting, and also educational component. And also, I think one more component is wallet. I think we can integrate some cross-chain functionality to the wallet. I think the Wallet Connect V2 has cross-chain features in native. So providing cross-chain NFT things in the wallet natively, I think like MetaMask or some wallet can access cross-chain very simply. And I think it can bring more user easy to use, start using NFT and enjoy the cross-chain things.
Yeah, speaking of the cross-chain wallet, I actually just saw recently, I think Rainbow Wallet is doing something like that. And on our end, we've seen a lot of users really vibe with Rainbow Wallet. And particularly for NFTs, they have some pretty nice kind of, you instantly visualize your collection and are able to share or send through things. So it's a pretty cool UI UX experience there.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Sounds like a lot of good developments are ramping up in the space. And I think that's a good segue into the building side of the equation. So I want to talk about the challenges and limitations faced by builders today. Are we still so early that the lack of good tooling is a huge crutch? Are we obstructed from more complex use cases because we need more standards for composability, for example? Do you guys maybe think it's a combination of those things, or are there other issues that prevent builders from building cooler things? Love to hear your thoughts as the people who are boots on the ground experiencing these challenges firsthand.
Out of curiosity, when you say builders, do you mean builders building the infrastructure components, or do you mean literally NFT projects that are launching and the developers and the builders that are contributing there?
If you have thoughts on either of those, I'd be happy to hear them. But I was speaking to more about like the actual developers and perhaps like the architects of the NFT projects themselves, like the people who are driving the frontier of like interesting composable projects or features that we haven't seen before, and what's potentially preventing them from actually, building things fast or even making things possible.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think honestly still early on for both of those categories. So there's so much happening on a weekly basis that it's often hard to keep up, and always having to adjust with kind of like what are the latest contracts or innovations or ideas that are being played around. So I know on the NFT project creator side, there's also a lot of information asymmetry. Like if you have an artist that comes into the space and they want to do something, but they don't have a lot of connections in the crypto or NFT space, they are completely lost. And if they try to learn about it, the resources are so spread out, and there aren't very good onboarding resources. And then once they realize what technology is involved, then they usually have to go to like some boutique firm that specializes in launching NFT collections, or they have to befriend developers in this space in order to assist them with the process. But we've seen some pretty neat new kind of flows on our end. We've been looking at what Manifold has been doing there and trying to cater to an audience where the creators can learn just enough about the technology to understand how it works, but not necessarily know how to code, and still be able to launch quality projects. And then on the yeah, on the actual kind of like infrastructure side of things, as we're developing it, we're having to, like, for this fair launch model, having to do super creative things to balance our contracts and augment them with new contracts in order to facilitate this being a reality. So very much, not even necessarily using existing standards or, literally building things up from scratch. And there's a lot of challenges to consider, from gas to UX, and yeah, a lot of these problems are not solved for yet. So it's both exciting and often daunting to tackle these things.
I would say that we definitely are not in a situation where there's like a lack of enough tools to get creative with. Surely we'll always be developing new building blocks, but it's amazing what you can build like with a single red Lego block and use a bunch of the same Lego piece. It's like you don't really need 15 different tools in order to build something novel. Really, it's like the sky is really the limit. And I think actually what the problem is a lack of developers. Most of the developers I know and projects that I know with dev teams are like, oh, I'd love to do these 25 different things. We just don't have the time to build all of them ourselves. I think it's really more of a, we need more people, coming in from the education pipeline, that are being taught about this stuff in their university classes or high school classes, and that are coming into the space as developers. I think from the perspective of an artist, that perhaps we're, at a part of our phase, our hype cycle sort of phase where, people are valuing, PFPs and these kinds of financial things more than the art that was previously the reason people were getting into NFTs. But I don't think that's something that's here to stay forever. I think there's definitely the capacity for the space to refocus itself on appreciating art and supporting artists. It's just, I think we've been distracted by, just how much money was being made in the DeFi and PFP part of the space. But, I think there are so many tools out there at your disposal that it's really just a matter of sitting down and getting creative with these things, either as a developer or as an artist.
How do you expect that we will go forward, sort of separating those short-term incentives from what people like should actually appreciate? Like, do you think that's going to happen in some form?
I think it comes down to context and narrative again. It's like people aren't excited by the Reddit profile pictures because they think they're going to be worth a lot of money, necessarily, but because it's something that they can use to, reflect their identities. We've sort of talked about these things. And so I think it's about sort of reminding people of that and, re-engaging with, or, stepping back from, the FOMO and the hype cycle stuff a little bit and, really starting to ask, ourselves what excites us creatively and supporting artists like that.
Yeah, I also think it's likely to just organically happen. For example, for this art collective we're collaborating with, one of the super interesting thing about their community is that if you actually look at the wallets that are collecting, they'll have more NFTs in their wallet than ETH. So they're very, small collectors that are genuinely excited about the art rather than flipping things. And they are grabbing the pieces that resonate with them. And some of them, will snag something for like $10 and cherish it and not kind of necessarily even look to profit from it. They just genuinely appreciate the artists involved and they want to support them. And I think as the art instance of things propagates the space more, communities of collectors will form around these artists. And the really exciting thing here is that it's very boundless in how big of a community you can grow. If you're an artist in the traditional space and you have a concept, an idea, you can create one piece. Here, you can create a generative art concept around that concept, and suddenly you have 1,000 pieces that capture the same concept, but you can sell them at a more reasonable entry point to where someone that doesn't have a lot of money can still engage with your art and support you and become part of your community in that way. So yeah, I'm genuinely excited about that aspect of things.
Another thing is that as the space is maturing and we're seeing different use cases and different sorts of focus and interests and industries and that sort of thing, it's important to remember that like fine art, which is really kind of what we mean when we're talking about crypto art, in the last couple of years, is only one component of the creator economy, and that we still have like the entire industry of music to arrive, and the entire industry of Twitch streamers and YouTube content creators, with lots of different use cases and capacities to explore. I think that's probably gaming and digital experience creation and these sorts of content creators have still really yet to arrive in mass, and I think that'll be probably a big component of the next bull run.
Yeah, that's going to be super exciting. There's obviously a ceiling like that we haven't discovered yet for this technology and how we can use it. So I think this might be a good time to even move into a little bit more of like a forecasting mode. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about ways that NFTs could eventually integrate with people's daily lives. Do you guys ever think of any like emerging use cases or even like simple UX improvements that you think will drive us towards this kind of usage?
I've got a bunch of thoughts. I just wanted to make sure that the other folks up on stage don't have anything to contribute before I dive in here. But
well, I guess before you take over, I just wanna one thing that's been on our mind lately is building out, kind of integrating out some sort of aspects that are utility driven directly into places where NFT collections are launched, or improving the like almost like building a set of tooling for creators that is around utility. So things like being able to take an NFT, somehow convert it into a QR code, and it becomes an entry into a physical space, or making it easier to somehow take the items from your wallet that you've collected and get access to other communities or other NFT drops. So things like that have been on our mind, and I think that aspect of you being part of a community and being able to then use those privileges to gain entry to other communities or get benefits from the community that you're part of is probably going to help drive adoption quite a lot. And so I guess strengthening of that community identity and the perks of being part of a group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've mentioned the word digital identity, or the phrase digital identity, a few times here, and I think what comes to mind immediately is like, okay, what is my profile picture, or, how am I portraying myself as an avatar, or as a, some individual on a digital platform. But there are so many other, forms of digital identity that we've got as we move through the world. My digital identity as a returning customer to a business, or as a student who's gotten an undergrad degree, or as as a person with a medical history, or a person who's traveled on a particular airline to different country. Like there are so many different components, where my digital identity online, in Web 2, is multifaceted with loads of different data, and all of these things are areas that we can approach with NFTs to be a more robust tool for solving and aggregating all of those, parts of my life, so I think there's really so much to be explored still, with the NFT becoming a more robust way of aggregating my personal private data, and the way that I interact with different companies and different communities and different experiences throughout my life. What maybe in the context of governance within a decentralized community as a small example, rather than thinking about my governance stake as an ERC20 token in which I've purchased a huge stake in this particular community. We could think of every individual within that community as having an NFT that represents themselves as a citizen in that community. And because I've participated in 100 governance votes, each of which is like logged and nested, inside my identity NFT and my qualifications as a developer or as an artist, it's like, oh, I've contributed this much code to the community, or I've contributed these art pieces to these activities, and all of this stuff can be logged as an accumulation of my my qualifications and my achievements within that community, and then all of that data then used to reflect how much say I have in future governance, like weighting all of that data, and that's just you could apply the same sort of idea to like, oh, I've been to 7-Eleven 100 times and I've ordered 100 Slurpees, so I should have a greater say in what the next Slurpee flavor is, and I should probably also have a bunch of 7-Eleven credits, that I own a small percentage, of 7-Eleven because of how much I've contributed, participatory, in a participatory way to the growth of that project, at like a being paid to participate kind of model, and lots of ideas in this direction.
That sounds like a great foundation for a loyalty program that actually makes sense and rewards the users.
Yeah, I feel like that's for me the next logical step after like play to earn. First it's like pay to win, then it's play to earn, then it's paid to participate. It's like, well, I guess my job has been completely automated. I'm out of work because a robot is doing my job. It's like, well, perhaps I could get paid for participating in the things that I enjoy doing in society as a way to move past work, in the next 50 years.
Certainly hope we trend in that direction. I wanted to bring it back a little bit to like the building part, because I know that Taiju, you've been pretty much hands-on keyboard working as a developer in this space for a while, like building NFT projects. And I've personally had the opportunity to work with you quite closely. So I did want to ask you about like what you think the future of NFTs hold. And a lot of that, for the two of us is about cross-chain because it's a pretty unavoidable topic and also a pretty logical jump from the current state of NFTs, how they're born and how they live fully on a single chain. So I wanted to see if you had any thoughts about what it's like to build cross-chain NFTs.
Okay. Thank you for asking me. And as a developer, and I participated the DevCon 6 last month, I found that the account abstraction is a quite hot topic in DevCon and Ethereum space. And account abstraction is about the wallet, a contract wallet, integrate the smart contract to automating some text transaction and gas payment. And I think we can integrate those account abstraction stuff into cross-chain NFTs. And by that, we can establish the things that currently users have NFT in some chain like Polygon, Ethereum. So users have to manage NFT in different chains, like changing MetaMask network to Polygon or Ethereum. This kind of stuff users have to do to manage the cross-chain NFTs. But I think by account abstraction integration, I think we can provide the things like paying gas fee off chain or different chain. Like user has NFT in Polygon, but user can pay gas by Ethereum or Optimism. So this kind of things we can establish. So by this kind of integration, I believe, so in future state, user doesn't have to care the NFT is on which chain. So like user has the NFT and that's all. So user has this PFP or this PFP for identity but the user just has to care the NFT only. So user doesn't have to care the chain which the NFT is on. So I think this is the future. This is not a use case, but I think for the infrastructure and tooling perspective, I think this is the future state of the cross-chain NFT. So NFT has natively the cross-chain stuff, and wallet integration enables user to doesn't have to care the chain and just care the business, just care the contents. So I think this is the future state of NFT with cross-chain.
Would you say in that model, Hashi, that like multiple blockchains almost become like nodes in some sort of like a hyper structure where each blockchain has nodes, but each chain acts as a node in this sort of greater hyper, structure?
Oh yeah, but the NFT hashes are just a simple bridge. So NFT hash function is just bridging from Polygon to Ethereum, this kind of bridge. But I think account abstraction stuff and wallet integration stuff is just a new POC stuff. I'm just doing experiment. So, but I want to integrate those kind of wallet and NFT Explorer stuff into NFT Hashi in the future.
Love that we're talking about abstracting away these technical complexities from the user, because that's notoriously the hardest part to onboard people to the space. And we were talking about all of this like information and capability asymmetry. So that's definitely a good direction to head in. I also wanted to see if you guys had any like crazy moonshot use cases or like wish list type utility for NFTs that you don't see today existing, or maybe just aren't even being highlighted today.
So I think like one interesting aspect is that communities really don't care about like what chain they're on or where they're on, and also if more communities from the space had from the traditional space had NFTs, like if for example Pokemon and the NFL, maybe Girl Scout Club, the Girl Scout cookies all had public NFTs. Someone could build a complementary product that serves all those people, all those communities, and transcends the current way that things are done there. So one wouldn't need permission to start connecting communities and building on top of those communities, whereas currently nothing like that is possible. So you can't somehow connect all these audiences together that might have interesting overlaps and build a new product for them based on their identity. So signaling your identity publicly through NFTs, whether it's because of your loyalty card or because you bought into an art piece, could open up communication, more organic communication channels across these communities that could be facilitated digitally.
We have a partner that's doing some really amazing stuff called Cortex, the Cortex network that's approaching blockchain, Web3 publication of content, sort of approaching the domain name, architecture of, a namespace and a server, but being able to publish, gaslessly content that lives on chain. And then if that, domain name gets moved, that content written by someone about certain communities, still stays with them in an interesting way of maybe touching some of what you're talking about just now in terms of being able to, say, publish content that is about another community, and having the record of the relationship between those communities on chain somehow still. Probably not the best person to speak about it, but another guest perhaps for a future edition of this space in the Cortex network. To answer your question though, Eddie, I think I don't really have any really good ones off the top of the head that that are moonshot use cases necessarily, that definitely don't exist yet. A lot of the stuff I spend time thinking about is stuff that's only a couple steps away maybe, but some of the interesting problems about like soul-bound tokens and blockchain privacy and being able to encrypt NFTs, or perhaps like preventing certain wallets from being able to send content to other certain wallets, or this kind of stuff like that is almost necessary for approaching certain use cases, like you wouldn't want necessarily all of your medical data to be visible on chain to everyone, but then being able to censor some of that stuff kind of leads us down the rabbit hole of moving away from the censorship resistance that the blockchain is so useful for. So trying to strike a balance between this like sort of this totally open technology, but having some of the finesse of the tool to be able to make certain things private. One of the issues that has been brought up to me about soul-bound tokens is that if someone has the capacity to send you a token that you can never transfer, and they send you to your public address, right to your OpenSea page or whatever, somewhere even more public facing than that, like your address and your family's address, and you're, doxing you with social security, this kind of thing. If someone were to send that to you and you can't transfer it out, that becomes a challenging sort of problem. And so I guess when I think about moonshoot stuff, I think about some of the paradoxical needs that we've got in those kinds of corners of the space.
Yeah, and speaking of the privacy, I see that so many projects try to use the ZK knowledge proof to the NFT portfolio or NFT attestation. I personally, I like to attend the hackathons, and I think previous hackathon, I think 2 or 3 projects using ZK with NFT to enable user has the NFT, but the user doesn't have to exposure which NFT user has, but the user just have this kind of NFT stuff. So I think this kind of privacy stuff is very important to manage identity with the NFTs.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it was very fair to ask you guys to whip out a bunch of moonshots live. But I think the couple of ideas that you did talk about are all very necessary for the space. And so I think if any developers are listening to this, I hope that they're inspired to take action, to join the space, to explore and help build it out. All of those things we need in the space like now. And as you guys have mentioned, we do have like a shortage of developers. So there's a lot of opportunity here. I think we're almost getting up to the top of the hour here, so it might be a good time to actually wrap up. So I wanted to thank all the speakers for sharing your knowledge, sharing your thoughts with the community here. I do want to give you all each a couple of minutes to just, let the speakers know if you have any exciting news, updates, or alpha to drop, and where they can find you to learn more.
Okay, so NFT Hashi is going to live on mainnet soon because Connext successfully upgraded V1 from V2. So yeah, so we are going to release the mainnet, and before that, we are going to have the testnet campaign, which when user tested the NFT Hashi on testnet, we provide some gift to users, but we are just planning that. And after that, after testing by bulk users, we are going to release our contract on mainnet. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Yeah, so on our end, we launched relatively recently Fjord NFTs, but the model itself for fair launching is very well proven out. As previously, the technology we're building on is everything we developed during Copper for liquidity bootstrapping pools. And, that has a track record of billions in volume. So we're really excited to take this innovation into the NFT space. We're live on mainnet, Ethereum mainnet, on Arbitrum, on Polygon, on Avalanche. So really want to welcome all creators to try out this model. It's a bear market. If you're looking to do something innovative, to experiment with community, a fair launch is a great way to do that. So shoot us a DM, fill out a contact form, and we're happy to also give more detailed overviews of the product to anyone that's interested, and anyone that's looking to experiment with this fair launch way of building communities in the NFT space.
Yeah, and then we've got quite a few exciting things happening over at Charged Particles. I've pinned at the top of the chat here just a little bit of information about our SDK. So we're to the point in our development now where we have a software development kit that will allow other platforms and protocols to integrate Charged Particles into their contexts. So being able to nest tokens within NFTs, which opens up a lot of really exciting use cases that I didn't have a ton of time to chat about here today, but DMs are open in terms of anyone that's curious about what and how that could be done for your platform or community. We're also at the stage where we are allow listing external contracts to be able to utilize this functionality, such that NFTs that you minted on Super Rare or your CryptoVoxels parcel, or basically any ERC 721 can be enabled retroactively to hold other assets inside of it, which opens, again, lots of really novel use cases, and a lot of really interesting projects that are building on top of us now. There's I guess another project I'd love to mention that is building on top of us right now is called Unchained Music. This is a music distribution platform that's using NFTs and interest-bearing Aave assets to make the process of distributing music free for artists to use. Basically replacing DistroKid or TuneCore or any of these Web2 music distribution models, using our tech, making that whole process free and giving artists 100% of their royalties. And then, just one more little shout out for a project with a number of really awesome builders in the space, from projects such as Chainlink and Coindesk and Opolis and Skylab and all of these wonderful things, called DipDAO. So I just linked that up at the top as well. A little side hustle with some really excellent builders for anyone that might be interested in joining us there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you guys again so much. There's a lot of food for thought for everybody that was listening. And to the listeners, if you enjoyed the panel and you want to remember it, you can mint yourself a nice commemorative cross-chain NFT. There should be a link that shows up in the Twitter space shortly. If you joined late or you want to recap, this space is recorded, and the Connext team will have follow-up threads and blog posts. So stay tuned for those. We'll be announcing launches of our products, of our network upgrade that was mentioned. If you're a developer that wants to help push the frontier of cross-chain apps, hit us up. We're happy to help you build, brainstorm, and we're excited to have you along. So our next and final Twitter space of the series is What's Next for DAOs. We're going to have Optimism, Gnosis DAO, Superfluid, and Snapshot with us. That's going to be on Friday in 2 days. So it's also pinned on Connext's Twitter page. So we'll hope to see you all there. And with that, thank you all for joining. See you later.